rock, paper, hand grenades. I'm Representative Gary Harper. I am surrounded by New Hampshire state legislators tonight with Sir John of Burt and Daryl Abbas from, I forgot what town you're from.
Salem.
Salem.
Rockingham County District.
Why do you say it like that? Like you,
He's from Salem. I mean, who doesn't know?
I don't know.
You should know.
I should
Yes.
know, but I don't know.
It's Daryl.
It's Daryl.
Yes.
Daryl from Salem.
Yes.
It's my second time on your show, too. I thought you'd...
No, I was it was hard for me to remember Daryl. Remembering names is not my strong suit.
Well, you do know it is over in GTV, Goffstown TV, I tape my show.
Yeah.
And it is good. I've been doing it 9 years. One time I had the guest, I have his name written down. I mean, I knew who he was. I look at the camera and I say, welcome to New Hampshire Politics with John Burt. I'm John Burt. And my guest is...
She choked.
I spaced it. And I'm like, crap.
John,
cut.
Hey.
So we started over.
This is the truth, okay? We're all married.
Yes.
Fact is, if you can remember your wife's birthday and your anniversary, that's it. That's all you really are legally required to remember.
I remember those.
Am I right?
Yes.
I mean, that's it.
That's definitely a good start.
Okay, that's that. I mean, that's it. I mean, if you go above that, you're just kind of an overachiever, if you ask me.
Well, I am, because I met my wife July 13th
Right.
at 1:05 in the afternoon in Concord, New Hampshire.
What a suck up.
So that's the day we always celebrate.
Right.
Oh, wow.
What a man. You're horrible.
Yeah, no.
You're making us look bad.
Hey, it works.
It works.
Oh, I have a question about the hand grenade.
Yes,
I
what?
I forgot my hand grenade.
Oh, I got to show everybody a hand grenade.
Yeah.
If you can zoom in on my.
Normally,
my
if I'm on
favorite-
your show, I always bring my hand grenade that's in my
No,
truck.
I guess not.
If
Yeah.
I got pulled over,
Yeah.
and if I don't have Daryl with me, and they decide
You
to...
don't have your attorney with you?
Yes, and they do a search without my consent, which happens, I guess.
Yeah.
And they found that my hand grenade.
Right.
Would that trigger them, and would they be upset?
If they found it during a strip search, yes.
Yes.
I would imagine if they asked you if you had any weapons on you and you said no, and they then found a hand grenade, that would maybe set off
The red
an
flags.
alert in them. But
Now, how good is that if I said, I don't consent to search?
well, generally speaking, once you consent to it, whether it's your vehicle or yourself, your apartment or your house, all the search and seizure laws, you're consenting to it as long as it's voluntary. If you're a minor, if there's some reason your consent was not voluntary, it's different. But for the most part, all that's out. Now, if you don't consent to it, there's a couple different standards that they would have to either have some concern for the officer's safety, by articulating certain facts, or they would have a reason to believe that that crime has occurred, is about to occur, or there's a crime in progress. So they would have to have, if they have a description of someone, you fit the description, you're in the same color car, same make, they don't have a plate number, but they have, the state, it's a New Hampshire license plate, that usually would be enough to maybe keep the search going.
But if I was in Goffstown doing 38 and a 35, that could get you pulled over because our police over there are very bored, so they don't have anything to do.
John.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
John Burt.
Yes.
I love you, man, but you do know that you have already told everybody you're not running again,
Uh-oh.
right?
Yes.
At some point, you're not going to be a state legislator.
Do you think that helps me?
I think it does. At which point, all these things that you've disclosed about or said about the Goffstown Police Department
Well, they're good guys,
might come back to haunt you.
but they are very bored.
Yes.
It's like Manchester. They aren't bored because of the crime. And when I see my green light come on and 4 more cars are still going through the intersection, I'm going, all right, how did you continue to get the green over there and I got the green?
So if you get pulled over for just speeding, 38 and a 35, that's only a civil infraction. So there's the crime was of a civil nature, so it's not a criminal crime that they're investigating. And it's certainly not ongoing, especially if you stop. And it's not in progress, it's not about to happen. So in that case, a civil infraction alone generally is not enough to have probable cause to search the car.
But I've seen so many kids. It's usually the younger group because they just don't have the experience yet. The cop will say, "You're not hiding anything. You don't mind if I look."
Okay.
Well, if they
then
consent to it, then what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, I like on the, what is that, cop show? I watch that. And they'll say, "I don't have anything to hide." And then the cop will find, like 10 pounds of whatever drug. And I'm going, all right. Oh, how did that get in there?
Remember, finding it, once they find it, that's one issue. But then, that search is deemed
Did
unlawful.
you hear that lady who claimed that I think she had a bag of fentanyl, and it was only acquired through a strip search, and she claimed it wasn't hers.
And it was through a strip search? Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say that's impossible.
No, it's not impossible, but it's pretty. Oh, I mean, if you were her lawyer, you'd have a hard time making that case. But anyway,
It depends what the backstory is.
yeah. Let's see what we can talk about. Oh, I wanted to go on a little bit of a rant first. Over the last weekend, we had those 2 shootings in Texas and Baltimore?
No.
Ohio, sorry. In Ohio. And the news has tried to make that basically trying to cause and effect that they're trying to imply that the cause or why this kid went off the rails and shot people was because of Trump. That's the case they're making, because the kid in Texas went and shot Latino people because he doesn't like illegal immigration. That is true, but if you go into everything else he wrote, he also didn't like Republicans or Democrats. I think he was a registered Democrat, not positive about that.
I think he was.
But he was also an environmental extremist.
Oh, I didn't hear that one.
Yeah, he was an environmental extremist. I've read some of it. And then they want to make that all about that, but they leave that part out. And they don't even talk about the background of the kid in Ohio, because he's Pocahontas, what's her name? Fake Pocahontas?
Elizabeth Warren.
He's Elizabeth Warren supporter and kind of affiliated with Antifa. So he's a nutty liberal. The other guy's kind of couldn't make up his mind if he's liberal or conservative. And then you had the shooting just a year or so ago by a Bernie supporter who shot a bunch of the congressmen in Washington, D.C. So here's what the real deal is. The real deal is, if you want to really stop that kind of mass shooting, if we're talking about mass shooting where somebody goes into a place and indiscriminately kills people who have nothing to do with him, if you're trying to stop just that type of shooting, all you have to do is stop reporting it. If you look at when we were kids, and you asked any kid what they wanted to do when they grew up, they wanted to be a cop, a fireman, a soldier, a lawyer, a doctor, something like that. Today, most kids of that age want to be famous. Their biggest goal in life is to become famous. That's part of the equation. There's also other conditions that cause them to be unstable to begin with. 30% of all shootings like that are also copycat shootings. They're kids that read up on what Klebo did in Colorado, and they write it all down, and they try to mimic and or exceed that. Most of these kids are doing this. Okay, the fact that we know anything about what a 21-year-old in Texas wrote in a what did we call? I called it a manifesto.
Yeah.
Look around you. Find any 21-year-old kid. The fact that they wrote a manifesto is really weird anyway. But if they wrote a manifesto, they could possibly get 2 or 3 people to read it. One of them would be mom. Right? Well, he just got, in 20 seconds, 1 million people to read his crazy beliefs.
Plus. Yeah.
right? That's what it's all about. That's why they are doing it. They're not doing it because of a political slant. They're doing it because they know if they take 10 seconds and kill a bunch of people, everybody will know who they are. Everybody will read what they've, all the stupid crap that they wrote. That's where the problem is. If you're going to violate any constitutional right to prevent this from ever happening again, you would go after the media for publishing their name, their stupid manifesto, their likeness. If they stop that, those shootings would stop. That's my rant.
But I thought our friends on the left say in order to stop it is to take Gary Hopper's and John Burt's gun.
Well, as long as they don't come for my hand grenade, I'm good. Oh,
Yes.
no, that's not good. No, yeah.
So,
But that's what they say, is take the guns.
Yeah.
but imagine this. Right now, what's happening? People are trying to blame other people for what happened, and
Yeah.
rather than keep pointing the finger at each other, you're responsible for this. He's responsible for that. She's responsible for this. From my perspective, it does not matter to me whether they're a Trump supporter or they support Elizabeth Warren. To me, we have a person who's gotten to a dark place, who's committing a hate crime, a violent crime, for selfish motivations, whether it's personal or whether it's fueled by hate. And what we should be trying to do is figure out how to prevent those from happening. Whether someone has a hard line on immigration, whether it's President Trump's policy or some of the different policies being presented by the Democratic Party, that should not drive someone to the point that they're committing violent acts targeting minorities.
Right.
And the concern is, while everyone's blaming each other, what are we doing to actually try to prevent this from happening?
Right.
Because that really should not drive you to that behavior. And
No.
that's the concern, because I would feel that this person must have had some type of behavior that would suggest they would commit an act of this nature.
Right.
And how are we all missing it? And this happened in, whether it's Las Vegas, in Ohio, how we miss it as a society, as a whole. We miss that. And, you want to throw politics in and try to blame someone, we can do that all day, but we're not going to accomplish anything.
No, we're not going to get anywhere. Well, I know that the except for the guy in Vegas, the guy in Vegas is a weird one.
Yeah, they still don't know what
They
happened.
still don't know what happened, which I think they do know what happened, but they're not telling us. There's no way they don't know what happened. Not with they have in Vegas. They get cameras of you picking your nose. As you walk down the hall. They had to have everything. Everything had to have been videotaped.
His motive was difficult to uncover. They had a hard time identifying what motivated him.
Yeah, but all the other type shootings are the common denominators are the kid grows up without a dad. The kid is on or just got off of psychotropic drugs.
Yep, that's the big one.
What was the other one? There's like 3 or 4.
I hear the video games is one, and that's one that I disagree with that. My family owned an arcade when I was growing up.
Well, the thing when
And
So you've never gone out and shot a bunch of people?
never,
Not yet?
But when
you're
keep
going
in mind,
to, obviously.
in the '90s, right? The video games you had at home. Yeah, you had Duck Hunt, you had some of those games, but in an arcade setting, I had one of a kind video games that now everyone can have at their home. But my parents owned a restaurant. So they're working 7 days a week, one or the other.
Yeah.
So often I would go to work with my mom or dad because that's how we had to
What kind of restaurant was it?
It was called Funhouse Pizza.
Funhouse
It
Pizza?
actually, back in the day, before Funhouse Pizza opened in Salem, it was Playhouse Pizza in Manchester.
Ah.
So, but my point is that I grew up around video games.
You still got any pizza left?
No, it's not open anymore. But it was an arcade, and
Yeah.
people have birthday parties there, stuff like that. Kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
But playing all those video games, I always looked at it. Well, this is a game. It's not.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, well,
not a reality.
well, first of all, there is a difference between that type of video game and what they're doing today. When you were playing video games at arcade, you're still social. The problem with the kids today is they get in by themselves and they isolate. And there's a percentage of kids that don't even have any friends anymore because they spend so much time isolated. As far as the game shooting each other, I don't think that has a big influence on kids because I spent all my youth playing army and we shot each other that's what we did. That's what little boys do. They shoot each other. I mean, was it John Stossel? John Stossel had 2 boys, right? And he fell into the liberal crap that he learned in college, that boys and girls were the same. It was just the social influences that caused them to be masculine or feminine. And so he had 2 boys, and he decided to, he believed that. And so what he did is he never brought toy guns in the house or anything else. He said they just shot each other with bananas. Because boys are boys. Yeah. So, I think there's an isolation part of that, but I think the medication and but we can't, obviously arrest everybody that's fatherless or arrest everybody that's on medication, so.
Well, but did you hear the AG of Texas, the Texas AG guy? He was spot on. He was on why he would go on there. And I was shocked that it's still on the air, MSNBC.
Yeah.
The girl tried to pinpoint him into the corner of anti-gun.
Right.
So she kept after him, and she goes, well, Attorney General of Texas, what do you think we should do? Don't you think we need common sense gun legislation?
Common sense, yeah.
And he goes, no, we need more people to carry. And he blasted her back with train, carry a gun, and that way if you're ever in that situation, you have. And then he listed, a fighting chance. And then he listed that church where a guy actually pulled his rifle out and shot at the guy that did the mass murder in the church, and that made him flee.
Right. Yeah,
because it works.
One trend that I noticed with a lot of these, these tragedies with mass shootings is that the goal is to cause as much harm as possible.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't really believe these people looking for a fair fight. It's very rare you see them going to a police station or to an army base. I mean, that happens too, but it's more often than not.
The army base is a bad example. You know why?
It has happened.
But the army base was a bad example because that's what the media always says. Well, that guy did it in an army base. Yeah, but those guys are unarmed. They're not allowed to carry.
Yeah. I went down to the one on South Willow, and I went up. I got pictures. I was always going to post that. I never have. And before you go into the, it's a recruiting office. It says, it's a gun-free zone. And I'm like, what? Well, this is the Army, and it's a gun-free zone?
But my point is that this person is trying to cause as much harm as possible, so they're looking for a target area where they can do the most damage. And that's not much of a surprise that would be a gun-free zone. I mean, that's common sense, at least when you're trying to connect the dots.
Yeah. I personally think most of them would stop if the media quit.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about what happened, but as soon as they make this kid famous and every stupid crap that he wrote famous, it's going to keep happening. Because you and I could work as hard as we want to make this show that we're doing right now. Okay, if we took this show and worked our butts off, I think we could probably, over about a 6-month period, get 10,000 people to watch it.
Yes.
Okay? If I shot you on camera right now, millions and millions of people would watch it.
Well, you're getting me nervous with that hand grenade.
I didn't say it.
He pointed at me when he said...
Yeah, that's true.
But you know what I'm saying? In other words, if you stop making the imbeciles famous, they go away because they can't achieve what they want, which is to become almost like because little kids when they grow up, and I'm sure you guys did too, always wanted to be like a superhero, right?
I still do.
Yeah.
Okay. There's part of me that's still the knight in shining armor kind of mentality.
I want to be Gary Hopper when I grow up.
Yeah, well, you got a long ways to go. So that mentality is just there in boys. And the inverse of that is to be a supervillain. So you're giving a kid the ability in a 5-minute period to become a supervillain that millions of people know about. If you take away that that part of the equation, they go away.
But how do you do it with the media in the anti-gun
Well, that's
Democrat Party?
the media is the one who's fueling it. If that's why I say if you're gonna impugn any entity or person besides the shooter,
Yes.
because they're the ones responsible. If it's anybody other than that, the media would be the most logical group to blame for the shootings.
So there's two things. First of all, when it comes to a villain, they say in the comic book realm that, or really in, the best villains, in the comic books are the ones who don't realize that they're even the villain. Some people are misguided and they feel that they're actually justified in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which it shows how far off some people have gotten. But in respect to that, that's also a scary thought, to think that some people don't realize they're the villain and they
Well,
actually justify that.
That's actually pretty easy to understand. If you take a look at that, the medications, the psychotropic medications on the bottles.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I don't think I've seen them actually before, but my understanding is that on the bottles it says if you have suicidal ideations after taking this, call your doctor. Right? And I know people that have been on them. Usually adults that I know, and they have gotten suicidal. And so they they tell the doctor and they taper off or stop taking them. Well, if medication can warp your mind enough so that you want to commit suicide, it is if that happens in, say, 1 in 10,000, 1 in 300 people, right? That means in 1 in 30,000 people that are taking it, that flips to homicide. Because suicide and homicide are really not that far away from one another. It's still the unreasonable angst or anger within you, or hatred or whatever that you've built up, these almost imaginary scenarios in your head that you want to take your life. Well, wanting to take other people's lives is not that far off. I mean, medication will totally warp your mind. I know when I was a kid, and for a long time, up until, I don't know, probably the year 2000, they kept putting me on steroids to medicate me for my allergies and stuff and eczema. And I didn't know when I was a kid, but that medication used to make me super angry. Like, I was enraged a lot of the time, and I didn't even know why, because the doctors didn't tell me.
Wow.
But it was the medication itself, which would stimulate whatever the heck it is inside of you. It just makes you, I can't say that word, but you know what I mean? Medication will alter your sense of reality, so it altering to the point of believing you're doing a good thing for people. Like this kid in Texas, maybe he believed that bringing attention to the problem of illegal immigration and the climate being destroyed, it was worth killing people for. I can totally see that if he was on medication.
And then the counterpoint to that would be is how many people are on these medications, go on and off them, that don't get to that level.
Of course not. Yeah, it was same thing.
It's difficult to identify. And I think
Yeah,
that's
because
kind of where we began.
Every person reacts differently to any medication. Some people take stimulants and they fall asleep.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I want to talk to you about, get your thoughts on the scary thing today. I told people on Facebook to call the White House because the president seems to be entertaining the idea of red flag laws. What's your take on those? Define what one is and what...
So, to me, what a red flag law is that it's trying to prevent a crime from happening before it actually happens.
Right.
And it's really the first crime. It's not, and think of like a restraining order you would get in a domestic violence situation. The allegations in that scenario is a violent act has occurred, or some person is threatening you or putting you in fear for your safety. And it's when you're talking domestic violence, it's usually a family member or a household member or someone that you've had a relationship with. So in that scenario, what you're trying to do is prevent future crimes from a second crime or third crime from happening. At least
Right.
the allegations of that. to me, that's a different type of scrutiny than trying to prevent the very first one from happening. It's a lot harder to articulate, well, how do you know the first crime's going to happen before it does, and then satisfy the due process laws. So it is, to me, it's trying to stop the first one from happening. And people always reference that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report. And say,
Right.
how do you do that? It's extremely difficult, and I think if we were ever going to get there, the parties, we would have to work together on that, because there's due process issues, there's property issues, there's Fourth Amendment issues, there's Second Amendment issues. You have all down the line, just at the federal constitution, then obviously each state constitution has its own concerns it can raise as well. So it is hard to get there. So to me, maybe the intentions behind them are not necessarily bad, but at the same time, how do we get there is what matters to me, because it is a concern. If we can actually pass laws to prevent these type of things from happening, it's hard to oppose that, but at the same time, we still have constitutional rights that we can't just ignore. Because once you start picking and choosing when you ignore your rights as opposed to when you want to acknowledge them, that's a slippery slope and very hard to do.
Yeah, so to give the viewers an example, I think it's in Oregon they have red flag laws.
Vermont does too, en masse.
So the case I remember of in Oregon, what it was, a guy, I think there was like a raccoon or something in his trash, and he goes out and he's shooting at the raccoon, and the neighbors heard him shooting, and they knew he had been acting weird lately, so they called the police. They called the police and says, I'm concerned about my neighbor. They go over, the cop goes over, and the guy's single, lives in the house. I guess the house is super messy, and the guy was either drunk or drinking when the cop showed up, and the cop said, yeah, there's enough here. And so they go in and they take his guns and make sure that he doesn't have any weapons. So they have to search his house, take all his guns. They take the guns down to the police station, and then there's an evaluation period, and about a month later he gets to talk to a judge and make his case why he's sane enough to be able to own those firearms. That's roughly it.
That sounds like an example of a red flag law.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, the problem is a lot of people drink, and a lot of people have messy houses, and a lot of people shoot raccoons that are in their trash. And so basically, before this guy ever did anything wrong, you violated his Fourth Amendment right by searching his house because he had not committed a crime. You took away his Second Amendment rights because of something he had never done. And the third thing is, now he's got to prove his innocence. That flips the entire judicial system on its head, because the judicial system says, John's innocent until his wife catches him. Until they find him guilty. So in this case, you're guilty, and now you got to prove you're innocent, which is really, really tough.
So where it gets complicated, we heard of this a lot, with the red flag bills that came through New Hampshire. People would say, well, it violates my right to face my accuser in court. That's the Sixth Amendment confrontation clause. That doctrine only applies to criminal cases.
Right.
And
Well, isn't this a criminal?
Well, understand that with the red flag bills, or the red flag laws, you're not necessarily charged with a criminal offense. So the innocence until proven guilty, the burden of proof, perhaps some of the evidentiary rules, doesn't apply. It's civil in nature. So you don't have a Sixth Amendment confrontation clause that would apply.
Is that by design? Why they write it up that way?
Well, keep in mind, your restraining order in a domestic violence case is also civil in nature. So it's not a criminal restraining order. So again, here, you're the innocent until proven guilty. You're talking about the criminal trials. These are civil orders, and this is just another issue with red flag bills. Is that why should he have to prove, or why should someone have to prove they didn't do something? Why does the burden shift to this individual? In the way they're written at least in New Hampshire, there's ex parte hearings, meaning the person goes into court or the police officer goes in without the defendant present. So they would have to meet a burden of proof. It's relatively low. It's a probable cause or more likely than not, which is basically 51%. Once they get that probable cause established, the burden then flips to the other side. Now the defendant has to prove that they're not going to harm someone. They have to prove that they're allowed to have firearms. Now the burden's on them, where traditionally the burden's always on the party trying to advance something.
Right.
But now they flip it and put the responsibility on the individual. And then, of course, not everyone has the means or the education or the financial background to really address these issues. I mean, for example, if let's say the ex parte order issued, right, because your neighbor or whoever went in and got the order. You eventually have the hearing, whether it's 30 days later, 2 weeks, however it's written. Let's say you show up, and let's say your neighbor or whoever does not appear at the hearing. You would think that you're going to be successful in that hearing, which is assume that you are. But the way our laws, at least the proposed bills were, your name would have been in the NICS database. So what would happen is, now the order would terminate or expires or it's thrown out, but you don't get your property back. So again, the burden's on the defendant now to show, yes, I'm eligible, I'm lawfully allowed to carry firearms, but the ex parte order made them a prohibited person. So to get out of the NICS databases, I've never done it before on behalf of anyone, but I've heard from different individuals, it's very complicated, and they compare it to the no-fly list, that it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. In the meantime, your property, your firearms, are being held, and you're paying for the storage. So one, that can get very expensive. Two, you can't even go out and buy another firearm because you're still going to be in the NICS database. Eventually, you should be able to get off of that, but to me, when the order expires...
Yeah, but you could have a lot of money to get off. Like, in other words, a regular citizen isn't going to be able to get off the NICS database by themselves. They're going to need a lawyer to find out the right people to call and contact and who to send judges' orders to. And
it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
It's a process to
Right.
do it. So it can be confusing, but just back to what I was referring to, as a civil order, just remember that's a different animal altogether.
Yeah.
And, you hear about the search warrants they get in these cases. Search warrants generally would apply to criminal cases. So when you see these red flag bills, I'm saying, well, what's the crime?
Right.
Probable cause that a crime has occurred. But if there's no crime, I don't know how they're getting a search warrant. That's one of the issues that I'm looking at is, well, you need something to have happen.
I think in New Hampshire, I think it was a misdemeanor or a civil offense if the person lied about it and got you in trouble. So there was almost no crime for the person lying, because I think it was Maryland or North Carolina, I can't remember which state it was, where the sister was mad at her brother. She made up some stories. Whoops, is that your...
Yeah.
Is it this one?
Line 1. That's you, yeah.
We have people calling in.
Press here.
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, hi. Former Representative Hagan here.
Hi, Bob.
I'm listening to the conversation, and I find it outrageous, absolutely outrageous, that they have flipped the Constitution on its head, and you have to prove that you're innocent. That's not what our Constitution says. That's not what the laws were meant to provide. And this is outrageous that we have this scenario. And I would like your guest to comment on how he plans to fix this, because he seems to be defending it. And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Barb. I think you have to press the button again. No, I didn't get the idea that you were defending it. I was getting the idea that you're explaining how complicated
Yes.
it would be to actually implement it.
I'm not defending. Yeah, I'm not defending red flag bills. I think that if we were to work together, all parties, we could maybe come up with a version of this that wouldn't trample our rights. But when I look at it, there's a lot of problems with.
There's a lot of red flags go up.
There's a lot of issues from start to finish. One simple issue. When you had the evidentiary standard, right? They said that you wouldn't have the way they were originally drafted, you only evidentiary rules that the court would be held to was the evidence would have to be considered material and relevant. Now, first of all, if it's material, then it's relevant. It's more of a narrower definition of relevancy.
Right.
Relevancy is generally
What
a broad
kind of evidence would they need for something like that?
But that's all that's the only rule that would apply. So you can have 4 or 5 different levels of hearsay that could be admissible. And when it comes to reliability, even the ACLU kind of weighed in on that, saying, well, there should be some evidentiary rules that apply. You can have some relaxed standards because if it's an emergency hearing, you're not going to be able to get everything certified in time. But within reason, here they're throwing out the whole book.
Right.
And then you have the problem is with a lot of the evidentiary rules, they are concerned with reliability of the evidence.
Yeah.
If reliability is out the door, that's a problem. And that creates a whole nother issue. Then you have the lowest burden of proof. You mix a low burden of proof together with really having no evidentiary rules. Yeah. You're bound to come up with conclusions that aren't really supported in fact.
Well, over that sister lying about the brother, and then the police showed up at the brother's house, and he wasn't going to have it. He says, "You're not taking my guns," and things happened, and he ended up dead. But nothing happens to her for lying, and they even said, yeah, she made it up. But here's a dead guy. To me, that's at least manslaughter.
And it's a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
You're calling the police. You're essentially filing a false report or making a false claim, and there's all these reactions to it. What that does to someone's reputation. Yeah. If something like that happened to me and I had an order against me on my record, and it's in the newspaper, even if it turns out the person made it up or lied or misrepresented the facts, there's always going to be a small percentage of the people who only read the first story.
Yep.
Right.
So it's completely concerning that you really want to make sure that if we had a version of this that worked, we did it right. The problem I saw on the Criminal Justice Committee was that one side was so focused on the firearms aspect, and we couldn't get past that. At least at this point, we can't get past the firearms aspect to deal with the concerns that the red flag bills are supposed to address.
Why couldn't they just have if this was such an important thing, instead of violating people's liberty, why wouldn't you go to the police, say, "Hey, I'm worried about John," and they would go visit and come up with, try to make a best guess as to whether there's any legitimacy behind the complaint, and then first thing would be to require John to maybe get counseling for a little while.
Well, that was part of the problem.
Instead of immediately taking away his ability to defend himself or threat, because if he's actually unstable, let's assume for a second he's completely unstable, and they come to his door and say, "We come in to take your guns." Well, if he's that unstable, he might shoot the cops. So why not, instead of, because people, let's say we call this new red flag law, and and John knows if he cooperates, he never has to give up his guns. He's going to be a lot more amendable to this process, and it might accomplish the same thing without violating his liberty.
Well, first of all, again, let's assume John is unstable, and someone gets a order under a red flag law.
Yeah.
The police come to your house, serve you with the order. Let's say it's an order that you have to surrender your firearms. Right? The police take your firearms. The way HB 687 was written, the police then leave with your firearms, but you still have the problem that John, hypothetically, is unstable. And it didn't provide any help or assistance, or it just would abandon the person there. Now, first of all, having your house searched by police, I don't care, stable or not, it's going to be a stressful situation. So now you have an unstable person going through a very stressful situation, and the law doesn't actually address that this person has been found by a court to be unstable. Regardless of how you got to the point where the court made that finding,
Well, the alleged elderly abuse bill that Governor Sununu rightfully just vetoed was the same thing. You know, they would come and take your guns, and here you are unstable, you're abusing the elderly, but there's nothing else that they'll do to you. They just take your guns.
It doesn't address the underlying
That's right,
issue that's still a concern, that you have a person who is starting to get to that dark place, or someone who's, making threats, or someone who's, whatever crime or threats they're making. Let's address that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I kept saying, well, can't this bill be about, vulnerable adults? We got to leave. The firearms section needs to stay. It's like, well, what does protecting vulnerable adults from financial crimes have to do with fire? I mean, we couldn't get past that conversation in.
That's why
committee.
I really believe this is strictly about anti-Second Amendment.
It is.
Because if they were really trying to resolve a problem, they could go to John's. Why do we keep picking on you?
I don't know.
Well, you threatened to
my
shoot
Trump
me.
hat?
Now it's.
Okay,
Is
so
it my Trump
so
hat?
yeah, it's a Trump hat. That's why. So yeah, okay. So they come to my house. If we were really trying to deal with this, if they really believed I was unstable, coming to my house and sitting down and talk to me, and maybe in a case like this where the cops really believe that there's could be a legitimate problem, they come to me and they bring a counselor with me and they sit down and talk, say, what's going on, buddy? And try to work with you, because if you're that unstable, maybe there's something really wrong, and maybe the person really needs to be talked to. And so taking that avenue of trying to help the community means that once the red flag bill went into effect, most of the Second Amendment people would know that even if your neighbor calls on you for a red flag visit, they know they're not coming to take your gun, so they're not going to be all that worried about it. They're not going to be triggered. That's a good word. We got to talk about that other thing. They're not going to be triggered because of the cop coming saying, "Hey, we've got some concerns. Would like to sit down and talk to you." They're not going to be worried about the cops coming and taking everything, and so they'd be willing to talk.
Well, can I answer one small thing, part of it, where you said it always comes back to the guns, and that's all they want.
That's all it is.
I've sat for 3 terms, and Daryl sits with me too, on the House Criminal Justice Committee. I want to tell the viewers that. I have heard more than once, I've heard it a dozen times, where the anti-gunner is sitting there, and they always say, this is the start, or a small step toward the goal of removing the gun. They don't say the last word of removing the gun, but they always leave, they accidentally let those little words slip, because I listen to them very carefully, and they say, this is a start.
Right.
And when I say that they can't help themselves with the verbiage,
Yeah.
I will say, with House Bill 687, I said this bill should be about preventing violent crimes and suicide. I said, so let's just focus on that issue for now. I can't even get to that conversation because but we're going to keep the firearms in here. And I said, well, we're going to let's get to the first issue, then we'll start moving down. I said, and I will say the reason why people interpret these bills as anti-Second Amendment is because you're over the top with the firearm issues, and that the primary issues shouldn't be firearms. I said, but the perception is going to be there when you insist on keep bringing that up as the primary issue when it really shouldn't be. And that was even highlighted more in HB 696, that the vulnerable adults one.
Right. Because the thing is that they come to my house, and let's say they're right. Maybe I am very unstable. They take all my guns, but their concern is I'm unstable because they think I might be suicidal. Well, that doesn't mean they didn't take all the medication that I could swallow as soon as they walk out the door. So they're really not trying to prevent me from killing myself.
No.
That has nothing to do with it. If it was just trying to keep you from killing yourself, they'd sit down and talk to you and find out what's going on and maybe get you help. But that's not what they care about.
And I found
Whoa.
Oh, it almost went off.
Yeah, if we blow up, thank you for watching.
Yeah. Just think of the ratings, John.
Oh, that's true. We would have good ratings.
We would go out with a bang, man.
Yeah, well, I would be running that way. Hopefully, I can get out of.
No, you're not that fast.
No.
No.
Wishful thinking. So, for me, when you have these conversations, it's hard. It was hard to really I thought, have productive conversations. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but it really, I said, well, if you're not willing to even talk the common sense here with me,
Yeah.
this is going to be presented this way now as an anti-Second Amendment bill, and that's not. I'm not on board with that.
Now,
I said,
New
I'm on board.
Hampshire's red flag law bill that's retained in-house criminal justice. Where do you think, who knows where it's going to go, but where do you think it could go?
Well, we retained it. It was the initial vote was ought to pass.
Yeah.
And I believe it was a 10-10 vote.
Yeah.
And then that, I think it was ought to pass with an amendment. And I was one of the people that voted against that. I believe, John, you did as well.
Yeah.
Assume you did.
Yes.
And then there was just ought to pass. Originally, I want to say a few more of the Democrats dropped off after that. And just so people know, on the committee, there's 20 members. 12 of the members are Democrats. 8 of us are Republicans. So we had 2 Democrats vote against it from the start.
Yeah.
Then I want to say it might have been 14-6. Don't quote me on that one. On voting in opposition for it not to pass.
Well, yes.
So then I actually made the motion to retain it, just saying let's just keep it off the floor. Let's just keep it.
Keep it off the floor of the House.
There's enough of them floating around. It is what it is.
Because rumor has Democrats do not like anti-gun bills in the second year for election year.
But part of my thought process was, in being a first year rep, and I knew HB 696 was coming around with, I thought, nearly the same constitutional issues, the same drafting issues, the same procedural issues. It's basically another version of the same bill was coming down the pipeline. I thought we would retain both of those, and if there was a small chance of trying to fix those, and maybe I'm chasing a unicorn. Yeah. I said, well, let's do them together. But then that one, it was ought to pass 12-8, strict party line. And I remember literally saying, what happened? I thought we were going to fix one. Now we have the same problem. I'm not going to do it twice.
Right.
I said, so what? Who got the who in here? I think I was just kind of talking out of order in there, but it was unfortunate that then went to the House floor, and it was a party line vote for the most part. So
yes. Yeah.
And now we retained one, and I keep saying we could have kept the other one.
The elderly abuse, it was 100% Republican and 9 Democrats voted against it. It still passed, and Governor Sununu rightfully vetoed it. Because originally it had removed guns 22 times.
Oh, we're going to run out of time. So anyway, I'm going to look that up while John start.
Well,
talk about what you want.
One thing I wanted to bring up is,
Yeah.
did you see in the newspaper, I was shocked how quick it went, the sexual harassment law, or sexual harassment issue with Dartmouth College. They just settled for $14 million with those young ladies. And I'm like, wow, that was quick.
Wow, they must have had a lot of evidence.
No confidentiality clause in that settlement agreement, huh?
No. So why would they settle so quick? Just because it's that bad with the ladies?
I would be purely speculating.
Yes, yeah.
But one, I know when I deal with a civil case, if the evidence works against you,
Yeah.
At some point you're just paying legal fees. It also is something to say, something that dragged through the media, even if you're the victim in that, the plaintiff in a civil case, it is something to say to even put this to rest. And, obviously if they thought it was a fair offer and they take it, it's something to say to get the money now as opposed to later. I mean, a lot of factors go into it. But
So anyway, if you want to try to prevent any of these stupid red flag laws, please call the White House. The number is 202-456-1111. 202-456-1111. They are strictly anti-Second Amendment bills. You were going to talk about the Democratic Socialist meeting in Washington, D.C. last weekend.
Oh, yes. The video was incredible.
Yeah. Did you see that? I posted it with the. Did you watch any of that?
I did.
It is amazing. So the Socialist Democrats had a meeting in Washington, D.C., their convention. and they can't get out of their own way
No.
because they're trying to have a meeting, and one would say, point of order. Let's see.
Well, one said the last 3 people were identified as white males. And even though I'm a white male, that's what the guy said.
Yeah.
We need to mix it up a little.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, it was just that kind of stuff.
there's that kind of stuff, and every person would get up, would identify. Hi, I'm Brian. I'm he. I identify as he, she, or he, it, he, that, what, and then one guy get up. So he's really upset because there was a lot of noise in the room, and he gets triggered by a lot of noise, and they were making all these appeals to the chair about how triggered and upset they were, and how people were too insensitive. It was. I just pictured if one of these people gets elected president someday, they'll sit down with Vladimir Putin and just defecate themselves.
Yeah.
They would.
2 things. First of all, there was at one point in time, there's the Socialist Party, there's the Democratic Party, and then there's the Republican Party.
Yeah.
The Socialist Party, at least the separate party, is now gone. They essentially merged with the Democratic Party.
Yes.
Whoop. Here's our call coming in.
We get call. Did he say it? You put it.
And how do they get away
Usually
with
puts
it?
it up there if they're.
How do they get away with denying that they're a socialist?
How people are too insensitive.
I'm trying to call through the show.
I just pictured
Oh,
if one of these
Oh, that's a
people
delay.
elected president
turn it off.
someday,
Yeah. Yeah.
he'll sit down
Hello?
with Vladimir Putin and
Yeah. Yeah. You got to shut it off.
okay.
Yeah. Sorry, dude. There's some confusion in the lines.
Yep, sorry
We're
about
getting
that.
too much feedback. But
So
yeah.
socialists now hide behind the name of being a Democrat. Now,
Yeah.
a Democrat is very different.
Yes.
At least it was.
It was 20 years ago.
But now that line is getting more blurry.
Well, it's not
every
even.
day.
Well, no, because I think the Democrats, a majority of them, at least the ones running for president, are socialists.
They follow a lot of socialist
Well,
principles.
okay,
They may not call themselves that.
They
but
don't call themselves that, but
They
they
hide behind something else.
they don't call themselves that. But if you look at Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal, right now.
Now try it.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
What's up, buddy?
What's up? I was trying to get through the show.
Yeah, you're through. What do you want?
Oh, there we go. This is like, I can hear. Hey, it's Tyler. I thought we were going to talk about how awesome you are today.
Oh yeah, go ahead, tell them.
Gary's a pretty good guy. You were talking about Democratic Socialists, and we'll get a little political on you. Bernie was talking about taxing, like, Wall Street to try to get all his money for all these programs that he wants to do.
Yeah.
You hear about that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's what they all want to do. They want to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. If you look at all the policies under the Green New Deal, it would require pushing everybody off their own property and forcing them to stay in the cities, getting rid of most of the airlines because they don't want airlines, get rid of all private cars, and to get all that done, basically they'd have to take control of the industrial control of industry in the United States. It would actually be true socialism.
Kind of like China.
What?
China.
Yeah. It would.
Yeah,
It would.
and somebody was just Bernie's got a bunch of great ideas, but just look at Vermont, some of their social systems. They're not. New Hampshire is one of the best medical coverages in this country, but Vermont's in there. I don't know. It's not as good, and everybody loves Bernie, but Vermont's not that great.
No.
They're bankrupt.
All right. Thanks, Tyler.
You're welcome. Bye. I'll talk to you later.
Bye. Well, we've only got like a minute left. Daryl, thank you very much for coming all the way up from Salem.
Yes.
John, thanks for coming back east from Goffstown.
Yes.
And I'd like to thank Wilson Hill Pistol Club for sponsoring the show. And we're going to try to get the number for Wilson Hill on the screen so people can call or get in touch with Wilson Hill if they want to get involved. It's a really great place to go shooting. Hey, we'll see you guys next week.